It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
But I want to let's start with what Bob Ballinger said. And the reason there's been new developments on this, State Representative Bob Ballinger on Issue 1 goes before the Northwest Arkansas Political Animals Club and says this.
Let me say this. I am really disappointed for a profession that gets beat up as much as we do, where they, only good lawyer is a dead lawyer, right? And, all that stuff, right? For somebody who gets beat up as much as we do, for people to just beat up the legislature. My friends in the legislature are servants. Not one of them up there right now is benefiting from being in this business. They have set themselves aside.
Yeah, it was outrageous that he said that. Shows a disconnect of reality. But there's now one Arkansas news outlet that is essentially defending Bob Ballinger and criticizing the audience, just like Bob Ballinger did in that clip that you just heard or saw. The Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette came out with an opinion editorial. Don't know specifically who wrote it. It's an opinion editorial, and it is in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, right? This isn't yet NWA. The headline here, "The Sound of Silence," and it goes, and I'm just going to read this to you because you got to hear this. I think this is incredible in light of the corruption, that we're hearing every single day almost, or monthly at least. This is unbelievable that they did this. They write, "We've got plenty of ways to show our displeasure with our fellow man, some more appropriate than others. Circumstances matter. Booing is acceptable at certain events. Think sports. Think bad calls, such as any time a Razorback is called for holding. But booing a participant at an assembly as volunteers exchange views on a ballot measure? What would Mama say?" Well, first of all, that's not what happened. He wasn't viewed for expressing his opinions on a ballot measure. He answered the question on the ballot measure and then turned his criticism towards Arkansans in the audience for beating up on legislators. That's what actually happened at the event. Okay, that's number one. If you go back and listen to the audio, no one booed him over his opinion on Issue 1. They booed and laughed because it was an involuntary reaction because he said something so ridiculous that people in Little Rock are not benefiting from being in Little Rock. That's the story here. This is called spin. That is what this is. 100% spin. Somebody trying to protect or obscure what actually happened at that meeting. State Representative Bob Ballinger, they write, of Berryville, stood before the Political Animals Club of Northwest Arkansas on Friday. He was one of two speakers who addressed the crowd of about 200 concerning tort reform, and he spoke in defense of Issue 1 on the November ballot. Speaking opposite of him was former Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Paul Danielson. Both spoke for 10 minutes on their positions and then took questions from the audience. And here's where things got rowdy. Justice Danielson, while speaking, had referred to Issue 1 as a bait and switch and questioned how trustworthy lawmakers could be. Well, yeah, but if you go read the Conduit news piece, he was comparing it to Issue 3 of 2014, where convicted felon John Woods tricked the entire state, where they got more money out of this and ended up staying in office longer. So it was a bait and switch. There is legitimate reason to not trust our politicians. Corruption aside, legislative sleight of hand is a real thing, and it is done against the people. And there is recent proof of this. This piece, this article by the Gazette, this editorial is, they are arguing for your silence. The Sound of Silence is the title of this. They want you to be silent in the face of corruption. Even though what Bob Ballinger said it was an involuntary reaction. You know how somebody says something and you just guffaw, you just laugh because it's involuntary. It's not intentional. This audience wasn't rowdy until somebody said something that exposed himself for being completely disconnected from reality. This piece goes on. So Bob Ballinger addressed that while also answering a question from the audience, of which a good chunk were attorneys and members of the Arkansas Bar Association. Stop. There were attorneys there, but there was a good chunk of other people there supporting issue 1. According to reports that I have received, by the way, of somebody at the event. He made the point that lawmakers who put forth this ballot measure were everymen trying to do right by voters and not corrupt politicians seeking to rewrite judiciary rules. At that, many in the audience started booing the lawmaker. What? Did you listen to what we just said? That's not at all. He made the point lawmakers who put forth this ballot were everymen. No, he didn't. He did not. He said, let me play it for you again. Joe, play it for again so we can hear this.
Let me say this. I am really disappointed for a profession that gets beat up as much as we do, where they, only good lawyers, a dead lawyer, right? And, all that stuff, right? For somebody who gets beat up as much as we do, for people to just beat up the legislature. My friends in the legislature are servants. They not one of them up there right now is benefiting from being in the state. They have set themselves.
Stop. That's what really happened. He did not get booed because he made the point that lawmakers were everymen. He got booed and laughed at because he made the point that no one down there is benefiting from being down there. In the face of the fact that Jeremy Hutchinson is still a senator and he is accused in a guilty plea of taking $500,000 in bribes from Preferred Family Health Care, according to documents in the Western District of Missouri. So that alone is what's so ridiculous, right? But there's a lot more in this. I mean, we've had guilty plea after guilty plea after guilty plea. We've had convictions. It was a really, really stupid thing to say. And we've all said stupid things before. I've said plenty of stupid things before. It was a really stupid thing to say. The media, for some reason, this piece in the Gazette is trying to mislead the people. Obviously mislead the people. Look at the tape compared to how they're editorializing this. At that, many in the audience started booing the lawmaker. He tried to continue addressing the matter, but became visibly frustrated with the audience and stepped away from the microphone. At that point, Circuit Judge John Threet, it was John Threet, by the way, at the beginning of the meeting that said it was a very balanced crowd of for and against. John Threet, who headlines these gatherings, raised his voice, saying enough was enough. Sometimes it takes an adult. The Gazette goes on. Editorial opinion. Our considered editorial opinion, for we were there, Americans have enough trouble maintaining civility in today's polarized political environment. There's no need to boo someone in this setting. Silence would have been more effective. Ask any Southern lady. In fact, Justice Danielson was applauded several times. If Representative Ballinger's opposition in the audience really wanted to express displeasure, they could have sat on their hands when he finished speaking. In these circumstances, when a room goes silent after a presentation, the person holding the microphone gets the message loud and clear, and Mama would approve. That is not, they are misrepresenting what actually happened there. We have the tape. It's up at conduitnews.com. No one started booing and jeering him until he said that last little thing, which was no one down in Little Rock is benefiting from being there. That's what caused the laughs. It was more, and they say boos. It was more laughter. It was more people laughing at the ridiculousness of what he had said. Now, on a different note, I have a real problem with the media outlet editorializing what happened there, urging the people to sit on their hands and be silent. You are a statewide media outlet. You are supposed to be speaking truth to power. And maybe you missed the video, but the fact is the people are keyed in. And, you know, especially people that go to political animals club meetings, they obviously are aware of what goes on, you know, in state politics. You're asking them to sit on their hands when somebody is asking you to ignore the corruption? And that's what Bob Ballinger did here. No one here is benefiting from being down there. That's ridiculous. Don't try to cover up what's going on. And that's what really could be seen as you are ignoring how bad the environment is down there. And the people are educated enough to not ignore it. And then the Gazette writes an editorial saying, you know what, you just need to ignore the corruption going on down there. We've had enough ignorance. We have had enough of this. Everybody down there who's a politician, for the most part, knows who was on the take. We've had enough silence. We've had too much silence from our own General Assembly. Now they want to come out with new ethics rules. They want to talk about ethics when they've been down there the whole time. They've been down there the whole time, and they haven't said anything. They didn't report their family members. They didn't report their close friends when they knew they were doing something that they shouldn't be doing, when they knew they were doing something unethical. And now they're going to pass ethics reform rules that'll require them to report each other. They could have been doing that now. There's something called the Arkansas Ethics Commission. You can report anybody you want to the Arkansas Ethics Commission, but crickets. You see, and this is why it's so frustrating. We've had so much silence. We've had silence from our U.S. attorneys. How come Rusty Cranford hasn't been charged with anything? Somebody answer me that. He's been charged by Missouri. We wouldn't know anything about $500,000 alleged in bribes to Senator Jeremy Hutchinson if it wasn't for the prosecutors in another state, in Missouri. We wouldn't know anything about this. How come Rusty Cranford hasn't been charged in Arkansas? There's plenty of evidence out there that he should be charged. We have had enough silence, and the Gazette, after what he said is saying the audience should have sat on their hands. And you know what? That's really number one. The honest point I want to make here is he said something so ridiculous, so outside of mainstream opinion of those who follow politics, you couldn't help but laugh, right? It was a joke almost, right? You ever try to not laugh when a comedian is telling you a joke or whatever? You know how involuntary your laughter is when you are watching a comedian that you like or something like that? Or YouTube has those try not to laugh videos where it's just funny clip after funny clip, and they're challenging you to watch this and not laugh, right? That's really what this was. And you know what? It kind of gives me a little faith that the people of Arkansas are getting it. You know, when you try to make a statement like that, and it really shows you well, you know what? Politicians complain, well, it's you know, there's a division between me and the people. It's us versus them. That's not because the people change. It's because you are the one that have changed. You're the one that's different. You're the one that has a distorted view of reality. It's like the Marble Palace is another dimension. It really is. And you guys get down there and you think that you have a grasp on reality, and then you come out of the bubble and you open your mouth to your constituents, and it's obvious you don't have a grasp of reality.